These cats are experiencing G-forces, all in the name of science.
In these experiments, you can see the disorientation resulting when an animal is suddenly placed in a weightless state.
Those pioneering feline astronauts were a catalyst in the race to space because putting a human into space was imminent. In the 1950s, the space race started to heat up, and if the Americans were going to beat the Russians, they needed to get creative and find out how the body responds in space. At the time, no one was entirely sure what would happen sans gravity. Some thought eyeballs would bulge, astronauts might not be able to drink or eat mid-flight, and fluid in the inner ear could make an astronaut feel disoriented. And to actually work in space, astronauts needed to be able to orient themselves and control their movements. So the US Air Force took lessons from watching animals flail about in microgravity and applied it to humans. These bizarre tests were executed by a special division of the US Air Force called the Aerospace Medical Research Laboratories. The AMD conducted bioastronautics research, a special field that tests the biological and medical conditions humans could face when in space. But before putting humans in microgravity, they turned to cats. Cats have an innate ability to land on their feet and orient themselves. It's the evolutionary advantage behind their 9 lives. And that's what made them such intriguing test subjects. But when sent flying in a C-131 jet on a parabolic flight trajectory that simulates weightlessness, the cats completely lose their sense of orientation and ability to land on their feet. The researchers also selected pigeons for a separate flight mission. Like the cats, pigeons have innate honing and orientation skills, but when experiencing microgravity, they lose those abilities and flail about the cabin. The cats and pigeons weren't the only vertebrates pushed to the limits. Here's a rocket test from 1952, 5 years before NASA was founded. On board were 2 Philippine monkeys and 2 white mice. They became some of the very first animals to survive a rocket flight, and that gave us some of our earliest data on both extreme G-forces and zero gravity. And of course, Laika the dog was the first animal to orbit Earth. But what did disorienting kittens in a cargo plane teach us about humans in space? Turns out, quite a bit. In 1961, the AMD published a paper that described techniques to help people rotate themselves while floating in zero gravity. Animal movements gave astronauts maneuvers like the bend and twist, the lasso, and the cat-like reflex, which looks a lot like this. Cats haven't left Earth since the 1960s, in part because we know a lot more of the risks and realities of being in space and can send humans safely instead. And that's thanks in part to the hero cats in Zero Gs. Thanks for watching, and make sure to follow Focal Point so you can catch the latest innovations and scientific breakthroughs. Next up, we'll take you inside a lab that's trying to save the rhino from extinction. Don't forget to share and let us know what you think in the comments below.